cologne or anything, but I used to, like when I was your age, like I was into that. I had my bottle of Curve, Yeah. Yeah, that's how old it is. It's, been around for a while. I still have a bottle of Tommy Hilfiger cologne from when I was in junior high. Like, just like every once in a while, I'll bust out the Tommy. But but it's expensive. My wife, she wears like Dolce and Gabbana. It's like, dude, it's like, yeah, you can get that like for Christmas, like once every 5 years, because it's like expensive, right? So I don't know if any of you guys have ever purchased your own smell good, but yeah, when you have to start buying those things for yourself, they're expensive, very expensive. And that was definitely a luxury item in this time. So, and in this culture, like here, you open my cabinet and like, even though I don't wear cologne, there's like 4 different types of cologne. And, it's like, it's pretty commonplace here. But in their culture, that was like a very nice thing to have. And then think about that, like a 12-ounce can, like size, plus it was in like this nice box. Think of how expensive this was. All right? So, this woman, in other accounts, it says it's Mary. And we sang about that. Just like Mary, I'm playing the good part. I want to sit here at your feet. Right? There's Mary, and she, not the mother of Jesus, different Mary, pours out this perfume, this precious thing on the Lord. Now think about it. That was probably the most valuable thing she had. Okay, they weren't like living large, have a bunch of luxuries. Okay, where they were, and based on their situation, okay, this was probably one of the most precious things that she had. So, pretty nice thing to do for the Lord, right? Right? If someone did that, like, you would be like, wow, that's pretty awesome that they like love Jesus that much, right? Well, some of the disciples didn't feel that way. If you keep reading, it says the disciples, actually just some of the disciples were indignant. Everyone say indignant. Indignant. Who knows what that means? Yeah. Ignorant. No, it's a little different than ignorant. Yeah. Indignant. Anybody know what it means? Think mad. All right? If mad, like if someone makes you mad, and that's like a level 6, this is like a level 11. All right? They were real mad. Okay? You might even say a hot potato. All right? So, they were real mad. And they said, what a waste. It could have been sold for a high price and the money given to the poor. What a waste. Think about this. These are Jesus' people. They don't get it. They don't get it. They say, what a waste. When I gave my life to the Lord, I started pouring out things unto the Lord. The music that I listened to changed. I began to give that to the Lord. The way I talked changed. I started to give that to the Lord. The things that I started spending my time doing, I started to give to the Lord. I had a very bright future in wrestling ahead of me, but I could not live the way I wanted to live being on the wrestling team. It was too hard for me. It was too difficult. I didn't have the strength in my faith. I couldn't control my anger, my mouth. Kids on the team that I didn't get along with. Every day that was a struggle for me. And I had to make a decision, I see this path that I'm on for success, but I see where I want to be with the Lord. And that was something I poured out to the Lord. I gave it up. I walked away from it because it was hindering my faith. All these things I started to notice, and so I started to pour them out. And I started to hear this. What a waste. What are you doing? Why are you making these decisions? Why would you give that up? Why would you do this? Why would you act like that? Why wouldn't you come out and party? Why wouldn't you, smoke this or drink this? Because I'm pouring my life out. I'm pouring my worship upon the Lord. But the people around me didn't get it. They didn't get it. And sometimes I would ask myself, is it worth it? Is it worth it? Am I doing the right thing? But you see, it didn't end there. Jesus, he stands up for her. He says, Jesus, aware of this, replied, why criticize this woman for doing such a good thing to me? You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me. She poured this perfume on me to prepare my body for burial. I tell you the truth, wherever the good news is preached throughout the world, this woman's deed will be remembered and discussed. So Jesus says, this is bigger than what you realize. It's not just about what she's doing in the natural, but it's about what's happening in the supernatural. It's about what's happening in this realm that you don't even understand. And people don't get it. Even my parents, they went to church and they believed in God, but I don't think they understood like Christian music. What are you talking about? And then I listened to Christian metal and Christian punk rock, and they're like, this isn't Christian music. They just didn't get it. They only saw in the natural, and they didn't understand that there was a spiritual connection to all of that. What's beyond the surface? Jesus is saying, hey, there's more to this picture. You see, when they would die, they would be anointed, or they would put stuff, like this perfume, because they didn't have all the things that we have to preserve a body, and then they would wrap them and embalm them. Exactly. So Jesus, he knows that he's going to die, and he's saying she's preparing me for burial. But also, it's not just about this thing in the natural, but it's about her worship. Because she gave that up for me, that was an act of worship. And so Jesus, he tries to explain that to his disciples, and then he pronounces a blessing. So we don't give just to get. We don't pour out our worship on God just to get. That's not how a reciprocal, loving relationship works. We pour out our life to God because we love the Lord. But because he also loves us, he pours out in return. And so he declares a blessing over her. And he says, I tell you the truth, wherever the good news is preached throughout the world, this woman's deed will be remembered and discussed. We're remembering and discussing it today, 2,000 years later, about what she did. This seemingly small thing that she did. But not only that, but it's misunderstood, and how many people missed out on an opportunity for blessing because they didn't understand it. You have this group of people that thought that they knew better. They were hypersensitive. They were hypercritical. And it was very detrimental towards them. If you keep reading, it says, "Then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12 disciples, went to the leading priest and asked, 'How much will you pay me to betray Jesus to you?' And they gave him 30 pieces of silver. From that time on, Judas began looking for an opportunity to betray Jesus." And here's what I take away from this, is that, again, if you read the other accounts, it says that Judas was in charge of the money. And Judas was actually the spokesperson who stood up and said, "Why would you do that? We could have sold that and given the money to the poor." And actually, it says Judas didn't actually care about poor people, but he was in charge of the money, and he used to steal from it for himself. So he only wanted to sell it to get more money so he would have more money to steal. But yet, Jesus still called him to be a disciple. But yet, Jesus still put him in charge of money. So Jesus still believed in him, still loved him, still gave him the opportunity. But Judas, I feel like he has fair weather faith. So does anybody know what a fair weather fan is? I mean, y'all live in Detroit. You ought to know what the term fair weather fan means. Okay. Metro Detroit. Metro Detroit. Not Julius. He lives in Detroit. The real deal. OG. That's what's up. All right. So, it means like that you root for them when things are good, and then when things are bad, you jump ship. Detroit Lions people, if you're still a fan, like you're a diehard fan, you're not a fair weather fan. People who jump on the Denver Broncos bandwagon because they win the Super Bowl, so then they start rooting for them, but then when they lose the next year, they root for the next Super Bowl champions, the Cincinnati Bengals. Just speaking it into the earth right now. In your jumping ship, that would be a fair weather fan. So Judas, he has fair weather faith. See, even though he struggled in his faith, he gets to this point where he just doesn't agree with what happened. He wouldn't have done it that way. Right? And so he gets mad. He gets indignant. Say indignant. Indignant. So he gets so mad at his situation and what he sees around him, and he's so critical of it that he thinks he knows better, that this was the thing that set him off to go to the leading priest and say, "All right, how much will you pay me to betray Jesus and hand him over to you?" See, he was so mad at his situation. He looked around and says, "This can't be right. There's no way that the Lord would do it this way." And I feel like sometimes we're in Mary's shoes and we're pouring our love on Jesus and we're giving things up for him and offering our life to him in worship and praising him. But sometimes I'm Judas and I'm looking at my situation and I'm going, Lord, what is going on? You know, this doesn't make any sense to me. You know, you're ripping me off. You know, I look at this person over here. They're so #blessed, and I'm so #struggle bus. And, you know, I'm mad. And so it's like, then the response is like, well, I mean, if you're going to do me wrong, then why should I do nice things for you? And that's like where Judas was. He's like, you know, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of what I'm seeing, and it doesn't make sense to me. And so I'm going to go do my own thing. And he just turns his back on God. And I think if we look at some of our low points in our life, or when we give in to sin, a lot of times it's because of situations like this. We look around, we don't like what we see, we feel bad for ourselves, and we just say, eh. Because when we sin, a lot of times we know we're sinning. We know going into it, like, this isn't what the Lord would want me to do. And it's honestly, it's a faith check. Like, sin comes down to a lack of faith. When we knowingly walk into it, we just say, you know, I don't believe that God is sovereign. I don't believe that God is as good as he says he is. And I'm going to do this instead. And that's where Judas was at. So, my challenge to you tonight is this, that to continue to press into a life of worship. Jesus says, if you want to follow me, you have to daily take up your cross. That means every day you have to make the decision to put yourself at the feet of Jesus and to give up everything. If you take up a cross, we display these like it's like a nice architectural thing. It's a Roman torture device. It's what they put people to death on in like one of the most horrific ways possible. I mean, they didn't give him like the needle or the electric chair. He hung on a cross for hours. So the cross is not this glamorous thing that we make it out to be. If we're going to daily take up our cross, that means daily we have to die to ourselves. Daily we have to take that which is most important to us and say, it's yours first, God. Remember we talked last week about the donkey, and they said, hey, the Lord needs your colt. The Lord owns it anyways. You're just borrowing it. The Lord's allowing you to have it. The Lord is allowing you to have the things in your life, and it's your job to steward them by giving them to God first. So, we need to daily put ourselves at the feet of Jesus, and we need to be aware of our flesh, that part of us that wants to creep in like what happened to Judas and criticize others or criticize our situation or what God's doing. Because when we begin to be critical and say we know better, that's when we put ourselves above God. And then we start to go our own way. We turn our back on the Lord and start to go our own way. And every day, this is a decision This is a struggle, and this is also rewarding because Jesus looks at it, and he looks at your offering, and he says, look at them. Look at my son. Look at my daughter. Look at how they love me. I'm going to bless them. I'm going to pour out blessing. People will talk about them. People will talk about their faith. People will talk about what they've done in my name. And it's not to make your name great, it's to make God's name great. We're still talking about this woman, but it's not so much for her glory as much as it is for God's glory. We're going to leave here today closer to the Lord because of what she did, because she lived her life in worship. So we need to do the same. Live our lives in worship so that others will come closer to the Lord and they will see the heart of God through your life. So we're going to close in some worship, and I'm just going to give you an opportunity to get at the feet of Jesus and worship him tonight. If you have things that you need to lay down, then you lay them down. If you need prayer, we got leaders all around the room that want to pray with you. And if you've never given your life to the Lord, if you've never laid down your life for Christ, then tonight is your night. Come see a leader, and we'll talk about what Jesus did for you and what it means to be saved. Let's pray.